It is Wednesday, October 15th. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Darien Magic Parks and Recreation Commission, calling the meeting to order at 7:35. First order of business is approval of the minutes from September 17th, our last meeting down at the Paddle Hut. Did anybody have any changes, edits, corrections?
I'm good. Our minutes have come a long way.
I know, our minutes
Yeah,
have come such a
I
long
mean.
way. Tamara's a rock star on that, she does such a good
We spent
job.
an hour on them.
Yeah, we did, it's really bad, it's really bad. We did like an outside service.
Yeah.
I would
did
like
those for, remember, for
take
4
notes.
years on the Board of Finance, I
Yeah.
did those meetings.
Were they terrible?
I learned a lot by doing it, because you'd have to listen to the meeting. Was I clear about that? No, so I would go back and ask to make sure I was understanding what was discussed. And after a few years, it was very helpful
Yeah.
for just learning the job.
Yeah. So anyway, Tamara does a really great job. Anyway, with that, I will take a motion. Mary Louise, second. Chris, all in favor? Do we have any public comment?
Actually, I would like to make a
Adele.
Adele comment.
Please identify yourself.
Yeah,
For those
District
of us
3
who don't know you.
RTM and Chairman of Park and Rec. I just want to say thank you to Jen, and actually for you for coming too, and you guys following the Park and Rec, the Fair Tree Point, what am I trying to say, Adele? Actually, God,
Project.
been a long day, right? Okay, capital project, thank you. You passed the RTM beautifully with only 3 no votes, an abstention, and 63 yeses. And what I really wanted to say, the reason why I stood up was to say that thank you to Jen, because most of my words were her words. She gave us such a wonderful set of backup information that it was easy. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
We're
your
really
support. It was
pleased.
nice
Really
job. That
pleased.
was the Adele show that night. You did a nice job, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Susan? No, you're good? Okay. Move on. Okay, next on the agenda is the discussion and vote for the fee schedule for 2025. We had some discussion at our last meeting about doing a deeper dive type project into sort of pricing philosophy. Ed and Terry and John, I know you had raised your hands to work on that. From what Jen's told me and the communication I've had with you all, that's not really far enough along necessarily to
Affect this year's schedule.
affect this year's schedule, because Jen really has to start building the budget now. That's why we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about it tonight. And having the revenue piece decided earlier rather than later is important. So I think that will be a longer term discussion to put that philosophy in place. So meanwhile, Jen, if you would go over what you were recommending. We touched on it a little bit with Jim last month when you were not with us, but it'd be great to hear directly from you.
Sure. So basically what we're looking to do this year is, last year we did have a number of increases. Some of them had not been increased in a number of years. But we felt that we would keep basically everything the same. The one change that we were looking to do was to, if you remember back with the youth league fees, we were originally, the department had proposed to bump it from $5 up to $25, and we said, well, let's do it on an incrementally. So we did $5 last year, so we're looking to do the next $5 this year. So it would bring it from $10 up to $15. With that, again, it would not go into effect until next fall, so that they have plenty of time to notice and be aware of that change. If it's approved, then we'll reach out right away to the various organizations to make sure that they're aware of that change, so they can take that into account as they move forward. And actually, this fall was the first time that new rate went in, so it'll be a whole year before it gets increased again. So that was really the one main change. The other change was, we actually do have a film and photo permit, and we have been charging a fee, but that never has been actually in the schedule. So we thought that it should be memorialized in here by the commission. So basically that starts at $1,500 per location per day. So it depends on kind of how big of a production it is and how much space they're taking up. Is it 10 people or 100 people, that are involved in vehicles and things like that, wear and tear. So those were the two changes that we were requesting for the 2026.
How often does that happen?
It's not often. Sometimes trying to think when the last one was, because one of them, they were filming somewhere else, so then they just used our parking fee, because they were parking with us and moving somewhere else. It's fairly rare that it happens. I can't think off the top of my head if there's been one since I was here, but something had to have come up, but I don't remember what it was that made us think, oh, we should add that in. I can't think off the top of my head what it was.
One question I have, what's the typical timing of payments from the youth league, particularly the fall sports? So like soccer and football, like approximately when do they pay those fees, like from a cash flow perspective, do you know?
Well, it's usually kind of like at the end of the season. So the season is typically ended, and then we ask for what's their roster,
Okay,
and then we send them a bill, and then they send it to us. So we're just collecting,
for the past season, like around now?
yeah, I think she was just getting stuff in, yeah.
So it's retro.
So it's, yeah, because
okay.
you don't know up
Right.
ahead of time, so we need to make sure that once they have their rosters full, and so they know it's an accurate count. Because if we do it too soon, they may not know, and to do it ahead of time, so.
Okay.
Yeah, the interesting thing to keep an eye on is, and I think this will probably be next year, is Little League won't be able to do anything because they don't, but both soccer and football have significant access to Board of Ed fields. And they might shift some, and they can't live without those, so they have to pay those participant fees no matter what. It would be interesting to see if, if you've got $15 a player, that's like $15,000 or so for soccer and probably a little less for football. Like, they might shift some players and say, look, these players aren't playing on town fields, and try to reduce, like, it'd be interesting to see if they change
might,
that.
but
Which
if
might
you-
not be a terrible thing, honestly.
But also, if you recall, the fee at the schools was higher.
No, it's much higher, but
Yeah.
so they have to pay both. So, but my point is, like, there would be an opportunity for soccer to say, okay, if we have half the kids playing on town fields, we can save $7,000 or $8,000. They might do that. That's not a suggestion that we change this,
Correct.
but it would be an interesting thing to keep an eye on if the use is the same next fall.
Right.
That's
Once
all.
the schools open up.
Okay.
But school, I mean, like Henley's being used, for, it looks like life, I don't know, but it's definitely, even with the construction.
Yeah, football is usually,
Yeah,
No, but that's kind of the point I'm making, is they would say, you know what, like, football only has kids practicing, I think the only place they use is the back of Holohan. Everything else is school fields. They might say, you know what, we don't need to pay, I would bet they're paying in the range of $8,000-ish, I would think, based on the number of kids they have. Like, they might say, you know what, we'll just shove everybody at the high school for the fee we're already paying anyway. That's on it. Anyway, we don't, the observation was, it'd be
It's an
interesting.
interesting point.
It would be, baseball can't do it because they have to have them go on,
Yeah.
right? They have the opposite problem.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see if football or soccer changes their behavior a little bit. And candidly, like, we're kind of interested in the idea of maybe a little less traffic at Cherry Lawn anyway, so. Anyway.
questions or thoughts? So at this point, we would keep the beach access fees level.
Correct.
Maybe revisit that after Pear Tree's done. maybe.
Exactly.
Well, while we're just on the subject of fields, I know it's fees, but fields anyway, they tie together. What about up at, up where the horses are?
Highland.
Highland Farm. Have we thought any more about shifting more of the soccer program over to there? And maybe that would be of interest for older kids?
There is some limit, but we did add, with the schools under construction, we did add an extra field up there for them.
Okay.
So we did, trying to alleviate some of the other pressures and usage. So there has been field added up there. But again, it gets difficult, especially this time of year, because now, as it's darker earlier, because there's limits, you can only have a certain number of cars there at a certain time, and then you have to have a certain amount of time in between, so there isn't so much car overlap. So then it pushed it so late that they really couldn't get in like a second grouping, you know, so it gets a little
Parking is
tricky.
an issue then, yeah.
But we did add another field up there.
Okay, that's good.
What's the relationship like with the Oxbridge Club in terms of parking usage? Have you had any conversations with them? When things got, in terms of using their parking lot, because at night they're pretty quiet, right? Except for the paddle area. So if you needed, but then again, if it's too dark to play,
They're not,
but nobody, I mean, if it's too dark to park on the field, it's too dark to play, so it
right, there's no
doesn't
lights or
matter.
anything there.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't-
so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, or ready for a motion to vote?
Motion.
Chris? Second? Amy? Any more discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Did you put your hand go up or did I miss it? No, Jim. Okay. Okay. Jen and I thought we would spend a few minutes debriefing from the Board of Finance meeting. Terry and Jim, you were both there as well. John, of course, was there at the table with us. Hopefully some of you were able to watch that back, but a whole lot
It's a
came out
long
of that.
meeting.
It was a long
Yeah.
meeting, a whole lot came out of that meeting in terms of messaging that I think we need to be talking about and thinking about as we go into, budget and planning and how we proceed. As a commission, you all know that Pear Tree was approved by them. Was not, that was a very lengthy discussion, as you all saw. Some of the messages I struggled with, there was some pretty overt criticism of the current condition of the parks, which I don't necessarily agree with. Are they perfect? No, but, I think in terms of the message that sends to Jen and Sandy and his staff, I think they work really, really hard with the resources that they have and have done an amazing job using every spare minute to remove a few more invasives or do this or that or the other thing. So, but I think, if that's the message, then I think as we build this budget, we need to be putting in a lot more in terms of requests for support for maintenance. So, that's what I heard, then, okay, the way to fix it is, and I don't know that Jen can address, Sandy and the staff have any more capacity with their current manpower. I think that rubber band is stretched about as far as it can be stretched before it's going to snap. So that would either mean an add to staff or more money for outside support like we did at Wheat Beach this summer to get the dunes brought into condition. But did we have the money to do all of the dunes? No, we did not. So I think that's what I heard, but now we've been told, they didn't give us any particular standards, but there was a definite criticism. I heard a criticism there, yes.
Yeah, well, I think the criticism that I heard was less about how it looked at the moment, because I thought like there was some not from the meeting, but in general, like when we did the tour, I think a couple of people remarked that like that area that had been mowed just looked like a lot better. I thought the criticism was more about like over the last 10 years, this had not really, other than this project, like we hadn't really been talking about it. So I didn't ask anyone, but that was just how I heard it. It was more of like, you haven't really done anything with it now, until now. And granted, this project was like a long time, but anyway, so maybe just with respect to the budget, that might be worth going back to some of those individual members, because what I took away was, we're not gonna have a lot of money to spend on stuff. And so the idea of saying we wanna hire another person to do more whatever, I don't know, I guess I was taking the opposite message.
Yeah, but specifically, I think it was public comment that you're talking about, not people, not the
Okay.
board,
Okay.
I heard it from both.
From both. But there was a lot from public, I heard a lot from
Yeah,
public.
that was from
And it
public.
was largely about invasives and taking care of the actual environment as opposed to maintenance on a broader, am I characterizing that correctly?
I think it was all of the above.
Okay.
Well, that was my question.
It was really
Was
all of the
there
above.
a consistent theme, or people continued to say the same things again and again in terms of the criticism of the parks? But I think.
Of
hearing-
that park, of
I'm
Weed
hearing, yeah, of the open comment.
But I think there was a reference to the parks in general, though.
Yeah, well, that's
There
what I was
definitely-
asking.
It wasn't just directed at that section of Weed Beach.
So I
And
didn't
John,
know.
we even mentioned some, just kind of the end of the park over close to the paddle huts, which, those dunes have,
Okay.
not been attended to, that you've heard complaint about that as well.
Well, I guess my question, if it's criticism toward the parks, was there a consistent theme that people were saying in regards to their criticism of the parks?
It was
Or was
just
it
a
kind of a
maintenance.
smattering?
It was just
maintenance?
it was a little bit of, you want us to give you more money to improve the parks, and you're not taking care of what you got. I think that was
Okay.
pretty much directly stated.
Okay.
I don't know, I guess I just look at it as like, we shouldn't be letting those comments drive our budget process. If we just did a parks tour, or we did these evaluations and said what we thought, like, I don't know, I don't know, that's how I think we should be approaching maintenance.
Just status quo.
No, just what we think,
Just
like,
what we
not
think.
because of what somebody said in a meeting.
Yeah, but we had pretty good feedback on the parks in terms of maintaining, right, for the most part?
From this group?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I know, but that's what he's referencing. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, if we thought this,
So
I'm
we
like,
thought they were pretty good,
Yeah.
except, and so that's contrary to what,
I mean, it's great if
Well,
somebody
I
has
mean-
something specific that maybe we should deal with, but I wouldn't just say like,
Yeah,
let's
I mean-
increase the budget by X because of some comments that the Board of
Because
Finance
people
made.
made some.
Yeah, I think you gotta apply, in my opinion, there were people looking for problems
Yeah.
and said some
Yes.
things that were not that nice,
Yeah.
and I think we just gotta
Nitpicky.
filter that out and like
Yeah.
to the realities of like, if and when we take another run at this, what we learned, and
Mhm.
so.
right,
The idea that, there's an old picnic table should not change the strategy, like, because that's
Right.
literally what it amounts to, like,
Right.
somebody didn't like the grills that are old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't,
yeah.
that doesn't, in my opinion, that shouldn't change how we do this next, whenever that is.
Well, I thought the comments on the invasives, I thought were, went a little bit too far. Yes, for the short lane property, understandable, but if you look back over the last 3-4 years, what we've done for the backside of Weed Beach, what we've done at Cherry Lawn, I mean, just in general, it's night and day in some of these areas. You couldn't even sort of walk or even see in there, and now, so I don't know, I felt like it seemed, I give you guys credit for sitting there, but it certainly seemed, that you guys were in a circular firing squad, it felt like, so.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something to keep in mind, especially with regard to the invasives, because I think I did make that point that evening, that, people were really picking at the invasives in the background. I challenged them. I said, no, I think we've done an amazing job back there, because we have. And that's really credit to Sandy and the staff. So I was very concerned about that messaging, towards the staff. And I know I've tried at every juncture to make sure I communicate to them how much we appreciate what they do, but you hear something like that coming out of the keyboard, it concerned me, I have to be very blunt about it, John. It's a very concerning message. You know, there was certainly also a comment that, you know, now that we own Great Island, sort of everything's changed with regard to the park. So how we're supposed to be thinking about that wasn't completely clear, but it was sort of a, we don't have the appetite really for many more capital projects. So, you know, in terms of what we're thinking about it and how we're thinking about it and what standards of care they might apply in terms of when is something too far gone that we should be coming forward, I think that was left very vague and unclear.
Lori, on the, with respect to like the capital projects, like with Short Lane had the
Yeah.
plan of replanting those trees. Could we accept a gift if like the Norotan Bay Association wanted to put trees there? I mean, is that something that we, does that improve the facility without our having to ask for money?
I mean, you could accept a gift of trees, but they are so overgrown now that you'd have to incur expense to get it all cleared out first. And then they have to be maintained. So, I mean, the weeds have just completely
Taken over.
taken over the border down along the waterline.
It's a mono-invasive now, and it's, the invasive issues is a big issue.
Yeah.
I would think that we would want to take a look at that area and figure out some sort of program for the invasives.
What does that mean, program? Like
I don't know.
chemicals or?
No. Removal. You know, some sort of replanting.
But
Well, we
that
have
was-
something in the budget in terms of maintaining the dunes in the front. That's already there for this year, correct? And also expanding and going, finishing it up, basically, correct? So that's
Yes, we were
there.
looking to do the next two dunes,
Right.
to make them like the first.
But we should also probably go the other way over towards the paddle hut.
Right, so maybe that's what gets added into the fiscal year '27 budget.
Yeah, because we have not
To
focused
then go
on
the
that
other-
really,
the
that
other way.
area, yeah.
John?
Yeah, I guess, on reflection, I wouldn't be overly negative about this. I mean, every board and commission plays a discrete role in town, and Board of Finance has its own role. And their message was clear, they're concerned about spending generally, capital spending in particular. And this is one of the things they decided not to do. Great Island was another thing we're gonna have to deal with separately and come up with a plan that those guys can feel comfortable spending money on. So I would look at it as follows. By the way, after that meeting, I went out and walked a bunch of the properties, and particularly the west end of Wheat Beach, and I looked at the areas that were kind of criticized. I think it looks fine. I mean, you're not gonna have golf green grass everywhere in town for every park, but in terms of it being neatly mowed and the area where you could sit, there was some people having a picnic the time I went to Wheat Beach, it's actually quite nice. I get the invasives point, but that's gonna be a constant struggle, and it's kind of like flooding. If we wanted to eliminate every risk of flooding in town and every invasive in town, it's gonna cost a lot more money than the Board of Finance is willing to spend. So we're not doing that. What I would do is continue to concentrate on the existing park properties. I think the maintenance program is excellent. I mean, again, I went out and looked at it. With a critical eye, I really do think the commission and staff have done a great job. It looks fine. I would leave Short Lane aside for right now. It's been sitting that way for a long time, and it's okay to sit that way for a while longer. It's clear from the discussion is not only is there concern over that cost, but quite frankly, there's just not a community consensus as to what to do with that property. And it's going to be a long time before we get that. So what I would do is set that aside for now. I wouldn't spend time thinking about it. It's fine. Keep the area mowed around the grills and all that the way it is. Leave it alone. Leave the parking lot alone. Just leave all that alone for right now. And maybe in a while there could be an emerging consensus as to what to do, but I don't see it. So I would dispense with further discussion on that property and just go focus on the other park properties that need some thinking. So Cherry Lawn, we've got lots to do there. We've got the ADA stuff, which I know you'll help town staff with as we're sorting that out for Wheat Beach, lots to do there. So we've got lots on the Parks and Rec plate, we don't have to worry about Wheat Beach right
And that's probably the direction we need to go, because unfortunately, they didn't leave the door open for us to come back with a scaled-back plan. Like Great Island, they said, come back with something else, come back with another number. On Weed Beach, the door was shut, right? Unfortunately. I felt that way anyway.
Oh,
now. I would agree.
absolutely.
I think there's just fatigue around this one generally.
Yeah.
And it needs a lap, it just does. And, you know, the two things, if, just so we remember for the next time, is just, so number one is to let it, give this one some time, could let the fatigue of the number of runs kind of run its course. But, and then just the other two, I think, is the, really try to get some, figure out what the support is from the neighbors and understand what that really is and isn't. And then the last one is just, you know, I absolutely think it's the right move to go back for more resources for upkeep and that sort of thing, at this point. But framing that in the context of the project probably would be helpful next time too. Like, I would bet what we're gonna spend on resources is about what debt service on the 2.7 million was, and we probably should have framed it that way.
The only thing I would add to that is I do think we should take neighbor considerations into account anytime we're dealing with any town property, not just parks. But as a reminder, we are here to serve a town of 22,000 people, not the people who live next to the park. And you gotta keep in mind that residents near any town property, anytime something's proposed, the answer is always no, or I don't want to, or I don't like change, or any of that. And I'm not saying to disregard the input of neighbors, but ultimately take that into account, take a step back and say, is this the right answer for 22,000 people, not 10 people along this road, right? Because at the end of the day, they live next to public property and they need to take that into account. So we'll get to a balanced answer, not for Weed Beach, not for quite a while, but for other properties. We need to listen to neighbors, and then we need to put our town hats on to make those decisions for the whole town.
Should we be cautious with some of the big CapEx projects that we have scheduled in the next 3 years?
For example,
I believe we had talked about adding the playground on the sound, the Weed Beach playground.
I mean, that's not millions and millions of dollars. If it's $500,000 like the
Yeah.
Cherry Lawn thing, I think that kind of thing is okay.
Okay.
That particular one I would, so Jen Charneski is going to oversee the implementation of the ADA plan. This commission doesn't need to take that up. She'll come to the commission with things that we need to schedule in sequence for anything that's touching a park property. But keep in mind, because it's for all town properties, we really need sort of a full town approach to that and kind of an overall sequencing to that. So what I would do is for that particular playground at Weed Beach, let's meld that into our ADA effort, because there's a ton of work to do to get all of Weed Beach compliant. That's a piece of it, so let's make sure that's integrated, but I wouldn't take that off the list, frankly.
Okay.
And you also think back to the Parks tour, and there were a couple members of the Board of Finance there. And we were at Cherry Lawn. The message seemed to be, well, we don't want to support the circulation study because by doing that, we're basically committing to somehow improving the circulation there, and we don't think there's going to be the money. So,
Yeah, although I think the woman that I spoke to, I think that it was the concern that it would be like too expensive of a project. So I think if it was a circulation study to then spend $100,000, that would be different. But I think the way she was thinking was like, is this gonna be millions of dollars? Like, so I think that is maybe one of the things that like, we could answer. Like, well, we did this study and it's gonna, you know, not require spending a lot of money to then make an improvement. That's different, but the objection that I heard was not wanting to spend the money on a study that we're then not gonna be able to do anything with because all of the suggestions would be too expensive.
but I don't know how we
Yeah.
do that without doing the study, and now we have the overlay that the ADA report confirms that we have circulation.
To be honest, I can't tell whether the concern over that is spending the money for the study and potentially for the improvements, or we don't want to study because the result of that is to improve access and therefore the attractiveness of people coming to the park, and we think it's too crowded to begin with.
Maybe it's some of both.
It's a little of both. And so this gets to a broader issue about density and congestion in town and all of that, that's overlaying a lot of these decisions that people are concerned about. And in the new year, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about that and trying to explain how this works, what it's like for other towns. You know, it's one of my props in my office. Anytime anybody comes to complain about traffic on the post road, I pull out a study. We have a complete study for traffic on the post road and all the terrible congestion problems, and the study's dated 1952. Traffic on the post road has been a problem for decades and decades. This is not new information or new news. So we're going to work on it and try to have a lot of communication and education about what's driving all that. I've got new information on that I'll be reporting on soon, but more to come.
Okay. It's just, I think it's, why I just wanted to talk about this, the budget is because when I feel like as we've had our discussions over the last 6 months or a year, we've been looking at the changes in town and the increase in multifamily housing and trying to, think ahead and say there is going to be more demand on the park, there are going to be more people in the parks. How do we prepare for that? But then we're getting the message, well, there's really no money, or you don't need to worry about it because everybody's going to go to Great Island, which I completely agree with. But a specific comment was made, Great Island changes everything.
I think 90% of the Weed Beach problem was less the money and more the project. There was a lot of public outcry over that. There are different groups that really hated it, that didn't want it, that want something different. And because those voices were loud enough, I think some of the decision makers, not just on the Board of Finance, but elsewhere before certain groups even had a chance to vote, felt like there was enough a lack of consensus and enough concern in the public that they said, well, we're not prepared to do this, and they backed up. I think it was more that than a financial concern, to be honest.
And then, I totally agree, 20 minutes later, 9 million for Pear Tree sailed through. So there's no signals to be taken. We gotta do better, we just gotta pick our spots and kind of see around a corner.
Well, that's why I'm saying for right now, we need to let a lot of officials who were involved in the Weed Beach decision to retire from their boards, and in a long time from now, we'll pick up shoreline again, not now. I'm not gonna put it on the Board of Selectmen agenda for a long time, so.
I also think it was tough because you were going to the board with 3 big projects.
2 and then Great Island,
Well,
Yeah.
I included that in the 3, so it's a little tough. Though who knows if Weed Beach had been separate, if it might have had the same outcome.
But look on the positive side. Parks, everyone loves our parks. The top-rated properties in town are parks. The maintenance, I went out and looked at it, sample size of 1, but I think it's great. You have a lot to be proud of. There's a lot of stuff that we can do that's outside of the project that was rejected. I'd look forward and look positively. Tons to do.
Right.
So stop talking about this, move on to something great. There's plenty to do.
Any other thoughts, you guys that were there? I know we had some one-on-one conversations afterwards.
I said everything. Again, it's fatigue. I know this rookie learned a couple things. So, yeah.
Dellar is, unfortunately, it never even made it to your committee to opine on, which,
No, it didn't.
It's
And,
really
you guys
unfortunate.
don't say it out loud, but I think there are a few people, members of the Board of Finance, that owe you an apology, because they were really rude. And they did say bad things about your maintenance. So,
Well,
yes.
and I have 2 things. I think it was a little disingenuous, I'm going to use that word, that there was another financial expenditure that could not be discussed because it was confidential, but my gut is telling me the Board of Finance knew about it, as they should, and they kept it quiet. I think had someone said, we can't discuss anything quite yet, but there will be another opportunity to spend taxpayer dollars, so we're going to make sure that we have that in the back of our minds so we don't approve all these projects. That's all they needed to say. I think that would have helped. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about 37 West. That's one thing. They didn't even, they wouldn't, again, it's confidential, but they all knew about it, most likely. And I also think that there are people on the Board of Finance, and I'm just going to say it, that overstepped their responsibility. Someone just said they turned down the project, not the money. The Board of Finance is supposed to tell the town how much money we can spend and how much tax dollars we can afford. When they start discussing moving wetlands and they start discussing that deep level of projects, in my opinion, serving in government for over 20 years, that is not their role. You guys can all disagree with me, and no one's gonna
I
say
think
it,
it's
but I'm gonna
spot
say
on.
it. So, I thank you for sitting there. I agree with John that we should, I wouldn't touch that property. I would just leave it and let it be. As far as neighbors are concerned, when we bought Highland Farms, we had neighbors putting out petitions, we had this, now those same neighbors, they love that property. And I've seen them all use it. So, not in my backyard has been happening in this town forever. And the Bay neighbors, whatever you do, you're never gonna make them all happy. So I would not touch that piece of property, I would not spend one single dollar on it. That's my 2 cents.
Can we revisit the fee schedule and maybe just increase it for members of Board of Finance?
I agree with John about the fact it was a project. And it didn't matter what you said or any of the backup information, it wasn't gonna matter.
Because it was the dollars, they wouldn't have approved pear tree and not weed, so it, you know.
Look, it is what it is, it's easy to get, I hear you, and in terms of people yelling at me and doing stuff I wouldn't do, believe me, I deal with that literally every day, all day. And one of the things I have learned in the last 2 years is to get over it. And so there's a lot of times there's nothing I can do about stuff like that. And so what I try to do is say, all right, lesson learned, to kind of your point, let's move on to something positive that really could showcase our parks and make those even better, because that's the one lever we do have at our control. And I think there's capital money for some of these improvements. People talked about that, not just in the context, I think they were trying to grasp for different ways to spend money as opposed to this. Well, you guys are thinking about improving Short Lane. Well, why are the dollars going there? Why aren't you actually spending money improving the other side of the park and making that look like just everything else? I did hear that. And so I think it was less a criticism of the maintenance of parks and more of trying to convince those presenting us that really a better use of those funds is to go out and mow more or do something like that. I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but that's what I was hearing. And so again, it's not a criticism of our parks, it's more really that project, right? And we all know before the Board of Finance even talked about it, this was very controversial. There were a lot of people very angry about this. And again, my read of it is that I don't see that there's a consensus around any strategy for that property. And we need to have a recycling of officials who are focused on that, and that's going to take a while. And until that day comes, we should not touch this, in my judgment.
Okay. Thank you guys for your comments.
Sorry.
I just want to thank Lori for, and Jen too, and John, for all your efforts on behalf of that property. You've spent countless hours. Years.
And the acknowledgement of that
Years.
evening would go a long way.
Yeah, years and years on it. I mean, it's almost been a decade, I think.
Yeah,
on that-
yeah, and you
on
were
that-
there at the beginning too,
Yeah,
I
in the
think.
beginning. So, thank you.
Not just this, but for everything. I mean, again, let's take that as a win in terms of effort put into it, quality of the materials, all of our individual and collective work to get this done. Didn't work this time, let's move on to the next thing. It'll be okay, we'll be fine.
Okay, now let's move on. So we'll move that into, Jen wanted to speak with us tonight about core budget objectives, as she starts putting it together. I did want to have that conversation and keep some of those discussions and things we've been hearing front of mind, you know, as we have that conversation, because I do think it's important, you know, when we're getting this messaging about versus being very tight. So, why don't you go?
Basically, we've had our staff meeting last week, kind of to start the kickoff discussions on budget and what to look for and kind of what our thoughts should be. So with that in mind, kind of going to the capital stuff, because I specifically asked the question, the vibe I got was, there's not gonna be any money, so why are we gonna bother with a capital budget, or what should we do? So, what was shared with me was, go ahead, we should still keep looking at and putting forward things, really focus on, infrastructure, things that we have that need to be maintained. Put them in and we'll go from there, that we should still ask for those things, and obviously through the process, things may get weeded out or they may get kept in, so we'll see how that goes. So to me, in terms of capital stuff, that's like the McGuan parking lot, we talked about that, because that's in rough shape. Maybe the weed playground, certainly, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but all the ADA, we talked about that as well, kind of came up with that. So within that prioritization, we're gonna have to figure out how we put that in, roll that into our capital, and how it's gonna affect that, all those projects, because there are quite a few that are within the parks. So actually, I kind of was unsettling reading the final report, because so much of it was parks, and I was like, but, so we do have a lot of work to do with that. On the operating side, just to give you guys a heads up of some of the stuff that we're gonna be looking at doing is, if you saw in my director's report, we are going to be adding a position to Parks and Recreation, which is gonna basically kind of fill the youth services role, so for camps and that kind of thing. So you'll be seeing that, and sort of a merging of the youth budgets with Parks and Rec budget, so that'll be something that you'll be seeing as we go forward. We're also gonna be looking at, and we'll be working with Josh on this, the finance director. As you know, last year, we had merged some budget lines for, just for streamlining purposes and things, so we're gonna be looking at that. Again, there were some that we kind of identified last year that we thought would be useful to do that too. So we'll be talking about that, so that might be something that you'll be seeing. One thing that we noticed was, and I think it had come up in the parks assessment, was about signage. So one of my thoughts was, we were talking about it, was there's a part, one of the budget lines includes money for signage, but it's only at the beaches and courts. It's in that budget versus in an overall general section. So I think that would make sense to have it so that it's kind of park system wide. So that's another thing that has clearly jumped out. And I guess other than that, we talked a little bit about the circulation study. Should we include that? I do think we probably would want to continue with that, because if nothing else, it also ties in, and Cherry Lawn is hugely deficient in terms of accessibility. So by the time we tie all that, it's really gonna tie all those pieces together. So, because you don't wanna have a roadway or a parking lot without the access points to the, any kind of sidewalks or things like that. Like, it just all ties together. So, I would think that would be something that we would still want to include in the capital. So other than that, those are sort of some high-level things that we're gonna be looking at, and then if there are things that you guys think that we should be prioritizing or making sure that we put enough in, I want to kind of get that, your input, so that we can work on that and include those types of things in the budget. Yeah.
Just on the youth thing, as maybe me not being new enough that I don't know the budget, is this sort of a reallocation of budget lines, or are we actually adding a cost that we didn't have last year?
We're adding costs that we didn't have last year, so.
With revenue or without revenue?
Both. So there's both.
The
So
town had it.
Right,
Just
the
parks
town had it, it was done under the youth commission or
Okay.
youth services, it depends where you look, how it was referred to. So there's a whole cost center for youth services
At the town.
at the town level. So what we're gonna be doing is taking those funds and incorporating them into Parks and Rec. The conversation we've had with Jen is not to create its own cost center within us, but kind of, we'll be adding some different lines, but some things are similar in scope to what we do, but you'll just see some numbers will be like, hey, what's this about? So, and we'll talk it through when you have numbers in front of you, it'll be easier to understand, but it already exists with the town, we're just rolling it into Parks and Rec.
Yeah, and historically,
That makes
there was a
sense.
separate director of youth services
Yeah.
position that Alicia Sellers held for many decades probably. And I believe, John, the decision as after she passed away was to fold that under.
Yeah, so I
Parks and
mean,
Rec.
if we were to restate prior Parks and Rec budgets, I would just take youth services and Parks and Rec and add them.
Right.
And what you'd find if you did that, this new model we're talking about is actually a lower cost because we're not hiring someone at her level. That person's gonna work for Jen.
Right.
And so we're just gonna meld all that together. But one other thing about the budget is, the town is not broke. So one of the things I've said publicly is, I don't, and I'll repeat, is I'm not in favor of deferring maintenance or saying we're not gonna care for our parks properties or really any town properties in the way that we have been in the past. And so what we're having trouble with right now is we're having indigestion over some big school projects that total about $160 million. So Oxbridge and HHR, by the time you add all that up, it's about that much money. And then Great Island, which sits at about 90, by the time you add in really all the money that we're gonna bond for all that. And that total is $250 million. And that's $250 million worth of debt, and we're having indigestion over that. I mean, that's basically what we're dealing with right now. And lots of people, not just the Board of Finance, but other groups in town and individual officials are just worried about that. So I am gonna repeat update my February presentation on this topic and go through precisely what this means so that taxpayers understand it, we all get our minds around it. But here's the good news. If you look at sort of heavy capital projects after that, I mean, the Middlesex school renovation, I've been told, is in the $10 to $15 million zip code. That's 5 to 7 years out. And that's kind of it. I mean, we've renovated all the other schools. The town buildings are all fine. The Public Works Garage is fine. Town Hall is fine. It's fine. So there's not, and there's no major land acquisitions, except for Kip's Lot coming up like this, that I can foresee. And so what that means is that over the next kind of 10 years, a lot of this debt's going to bleed down and pay down, and we just need to go through this, mouse and the snake thing and get it worked through the system and start to pay all that off. We will be okay, but again, we're not bankrupt. We have plenty of money to deal with that. It'll be fine, and we should be prudent in what we're doing, but we should not be budgeting such that we let our assets deteriorate. That's also not acceptable in my judgment. So keep the parks looking good.
And we're getting a lot of new tax revenue without the bill going on, right?
We do, but keep in mind, the commercial tax base as a percentage of our grand list is in the 10% zip code. It's much smaller than in places like Stamford or Greenwich, where you've got substantial businesses there that make the commercial tax base much larger. And so even with the new developments here, with a dramatic increase in those property values from the renovations, it's not going to have a dramatic impact in terms of reducing the share of taxes paid by residents, just because there are so many expensive residences here in this town. That's where they bear a lot of the property. That's why they bear most of the tax burden. So just keep that in mind. It'll help, but it's not going to be a game changer.
Okay, so areas based on our parks tour that the output from there, that you want to give feedback to Jen in terms of things that we need to be adding in. She certainly mentioned a few, but other things that folks want to add. Deb talked about Guan.
I'm marking down about the invasives on weed, at weed on the west side, to maybe start adding those in as well.
Right. And I think other parks as well. I mean,
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
much
but
every park we've identified
right.
invasives that
Right.
need to be removed. It's certainly not limited to those two properties. I know Cherry, we've identified a lot more areas.
Yeah.
To keep working back, it really gets just down to what's the capacity of Sandy and the crew versus having to go back and get outside
Right.
contractors do, which is how he had started actually. That one fellow whose name
Yeah,
was escaping me.
Right.
And he did a nice job, and then he kind of disappeared.
It was a big job, he did a big job.
He did a big job, but he did a really nice job, so we were
Yeah.
sorry that he
Excited
disappeared.
about, yeah.
But we really need to think about,
We kind of grabbed him on the way up.
yeah. So what our priorities are and how many more parks, we want to tackle. I know over behind the playground at McGuan, that area, the playground looks great, but that area is very messy with invasives. Plus, we need some sort of border plantings to separate from the neighbors. That's been a challenge. And where else?
I'm just looking at the minute, like Woodland Park, small area blacktop entrance from Middlesex needs to be repaid, dead trees. I mean, I was looking at our comments from the last meeting. Houlihan Field. Bleachers are not invasive remediation. You can probably do invasive remediation at every
Everywhere.
single park.
Oh,
and-
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
busy.
So that's what we really need to think about is
Yeah.
What can we feasibly,
what's the number? Yeah,
Mhm.
what can we feasibly do, but then also we have to be able to accomplish it because, again, I know Sandy, and we've talked about it with him on, various occasions, and certainly when he has pockets of time with the crew, he will send them out, but,
then other things pop up.
then other
and
things
they
pop
get-
up.
they
Yeah,
get
other things
so-
pop up and
So
they
what's
can't
the
manage
budget
it.
for invasives this year? What do we have in there?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Fair enough. Do you know?
In excess of 18.
I thought it was
I
like,
was-
I thought it was
Yeah.
about that 15, actually.
15
Yeah,
to
it was
20,
somewhere in there.
as I recall.
Right.
Because then there was extra added on for the dunes.
And didn't we grab some from beautification? Anyway,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's what
Well,
we've
obviously
had
that's
every
gonna be a
year, and we'll
focus.
just keep chipping away, right?
One other thing, just to mention about the ADA study, keep in mind that the consultant said that really all the phases of that work could be completed over 12 years. So there's nothing on fire in terms of us needing to spend that money right now. Further, their estimates to get all that work done were in the $3.6 million range, again, over 12 years. I could see us actually doing this out of operating expense and not even capitalizing it, but let's see. The main thing point I want to make about that, though, is that as you think about your capital projects, make sure all that is syndicated with Jen Charneski to say, all right, here's what we're thinking about. Where are the ADA improvements or changes? Where are we on that schedule, right? So that whatever you're planning to do in terms of CapEx can be coordinated with that. So for example, any kind of a Weed Beach expenditure, say you wanted to redo the battle lot, I'm just picking something. Stop and say, all right, is there something we can do to coordinate to where you get both that work and the ADA compliance work done at the same time? So let's just make sure that is all matched up sequencing wise.
To that point, I'll share one as an example. We have in our current budget to redo the railings on the ramp at McGuan, the access ramp. Well, it came back that ramp does not meet standards. So I have not moved forward with that because we were waiting for the final report, and I was like, well, am I really gonna do the railings if the whole thing doesn't work and we have to redo? So we're gonna have to take a look at that. So those types of things are exactly what we'll be doing to
What's
take
wrong
a
with the
look.
ramp?
I don't remember if it was the pitch is a little too
It's wide
steep
enough.
or if it was not wide enough.
It can be the pitch,
it
the
could be-
width, the height of the handrails,
turn.
all that stuff. By the way,
Turn.
At
There
Weed
might not be
Beach-
enough space.
At Weed Beach, literally, all of those are wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Every single building, they're all wrong by a little bit, so the construction company that did that is on my naughty list for this year, and I had used other words earlier today about that. But when those guys did that, it was done literally completely wrong. And so, one of the things that I want to do with building committees going forward, and they don't have to have expertise, but I'd like to have somebody who's just the ADA irritant and says, hi, could we please recheck that? Hi, I'd like to go out to the site and confirm, are you guys doing this right? Because I will tell you right now, I am in no mood to redo any construction from this point forward because the ADA was mishandled. They know how to do that, they know what the requirements are, and we're not gonna have that happen again.
So
And Jen, you and I even talked about whether the, as a, Jen's idea, whether the town should have a professional,
Well, so right
on
now,
retainer, I don't mean like a fit, but just someone that we could call on when we do projects, because it is such a detailed,
we may
area.
actually get some time from the consultant who did that report to say, not full-time, but just could you help us to say, all right, now that we've got the plan, how do we march through and prioritize this stuff and sequence it with other town projects so we get it done in the most efficient manner possible? There's a ton of work to actually get that done right, and we will definitely do that.
yeah, I mean, we're bleeding a little bit next into the next topic, but they kind of go together, so I think we're okay doing that. But for instance, Jen and I were talking about Cherry Lawn, because here we just did the playground, so it's, and we're very much had top of mind making that an accessible playground. You know, that was something we wanted to do, so I was like, how did this happen? And she was able to find the documentation from the provider that said the project is complete, and we certify, and I think that we're, and meets 6 bump, and all these different regulations. So for us as lay people, relying on our
Vendors.
vendor to say, yep, you know, we've got this covered.
Yeah, according to the audit, they don't, and in fact.
No,
that
no, and I
particular-
hear that, but I'm just saying, as a group
Frustrating.
of volunteers who, you know, very much work, you know,
We're even having
wanted
just
to-
somebody on the building committee come in and say, all right, this is terrific. My job is to ask the ADA questions, so
Yeah.
construction manager, the team doing all of that, guys actually working in the field, show me right now that this is fully compliant with ADA. Where's what the specs are, I want to see it. Show me this measurement, that one, this one, that one, and let's make sure that we're all over that. And as, the more we do that, the more any vendor's going to get the message, God, don't show up there and take ADA compliance lightly, because Darien does not.
Yeah, but I think your point of looking at every project we do with a ADA lens is well taken.
Well, it puts us in,
On
kind of,
notice.
well, it puts everybody to where we're on
Same
an
page.
ADA footing. I mean, we take this seriously. It's not just compliance with the law, it's the right thing to do. We want everyone to have access to our stuff. And when we build that mindset into what we're doing, we're all gonna get used to saying, oh, this is great. Could we recheck, please, ADA compliance with design and construction and make sure this is done right? It's
See,
important.
yes, the other thing, the truth is, I think we went into it thinking we had done that
Yeah.
and got the certification. that
Trust
it was-
but verify.
yeah,
Right.
But so then that's the,
Yeah, and we just need to change our mindset, because if we don't have that, you can see what happens, even with somebody who literally did this and finished it in 2025, they didn't get it right. But we had assumed that it was gonna be that way and didn't check. Well, now we're gonna check it. I'm gonna check it.
but
So is there any
I hope we
recourse
have-
with them since they did, that they documented that they had been
I have not
compliant?
been in touch with them yet, but that's,
We're going to.
it's on my list,
Yeah,
is
I mean, that's
to
not
reach back
right.
out with them, because again, we have the letter that said everything is certified with all the different codes and things that they supposedly met and standards that they met, and I'll be reaching back out to them.
We'll get their help in making sure the playground is compliant.
Nicely said.
Sorry, we're talking about weed, we're talking,
That
Cherry
was,
Lawn.
talk
that
about
was,
anything we want.
No, that
that was
particular.
Cherry Lawn,
Cherry
playground.
Lawn.
Just, I'm by no means an ADA compliance expert, in fact, I'm not even, obviously the only issues I'm a little bit knowledgeable out of the ones that affect Little League, but to the extent that you brought up McGuan, number one, that should, I mean, I don't know how vast or tiny those things we found out are, but like, Challenger, which is, Little League Challenger is like at an all-time high
Yep.
in terms of the number of kids, but in fact, I think they're actually invited kids from outside of Darien to participate that, and that's led to, so, but my point is there's a lot of eyeballs and attention
Yep.
on that, and that should probably go up a little bit on the priority list. And then the other one, to the extent that, like ADA compliance, as I understand it, is sort of a town-wide sort of view, and you get, it does occur to me, did you say before that town hall baseball fields are one of the items that needs to get brought up to, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, the fields are, well, let's put it this way. Every field that we have
Mhm.
has no access to the field.
Right,
You can't get to the field.
I see.
So that's gonna have to be figured out. You can't get to the bleachers, you can't get to, you know, but you also need access to the field surface.
Got it.
So they're all gonna have to be looked at, so that's why there's gonna have to be a complete review and then prioritization as to, you know, again, a lot of it was about parks. So, you know, what needs to be done in parks, what needs to be done in other town facilities, then within the parks, how do we prioritize that? So it's gonna be looking at, and it might be that, I'm totally making this up, you know what, for the first 2 years, it's more important that we get these things done in the parks than in the, in the other town buildings. So we will be looking at it as a comprehensive unit. I know we're trying to have our first meeting next week, we're trying to get that scheduled, so we can start that prioritization and kind of group think of how do we
Got it.
put it all together.
Nobody should spend one more minute educating me.
The good news is the audit report actually broke it into phases, and so they have a preliminary bucket that says this is the stuff you need to do sooner rather than later. So they're gonna start with that, but you raise the right point.
Right. But there might be things like that are not taken into account on that list. that
It
we
sort of
need to
occurred to me
think.
that,
Yep.
because you mentioned Holohan baseball field, and it seems to me like that might be the lowest hanging fruit one, because there's literally, like, it seems to me the closest the field is to the road, the simpler the project is, and you couldn't have an easier one than that one, right? Because it's like,
Potentially, yeah.
that just seems like a
Right.
low hanging fruit one.
However,
Yeah.
if it's really more important that we get the Challenger field done,
Yeah.
then that might be the priority, even though the other one might be easier to do. So
Totally.
we're gonna have to look.
Yeah.
John, is the town thinking of this sort of as a separate budget bucket? Or is it really just each department that's impacted has to build it into their
I'll
capital?
let Josh weigh in on that in terms of how he wants to track the accounting. I mean, unlike Great Island, where you kind of want to put a spotlight on that, he may actually think that it's better to put it in the individual department budgets and then just code them, where we can roll up a series of codes and see what the total expenditure is. As a county man, I'd let him decide how he wants to.
But are the
Hasn't weighed in yet.
selectmen thinking about this as sort of a holistic, we need to be earmarking 3 million, whatever, as a town, as opposed to just saying, okay, Parks and Rec, you're gonna need to spend 2 of that million, so that's 2 million you don't have for
Well, the
something
problem-
else.
So the problem is that the way the money's gonna get spent, sometimes it's just gonna be operating expense, because we clean up something here and there. Sometimes we're gonna be redoing a building, which will be capitalized, and the ADA compliance is gonna be fixed as part of that project. And so to try and have a capital project that has elements of ADA that we want to pull out separately so we can track that,
Too hard.
I would say no. And that we will just take into account the fact that some budgets end up being higher because they're doing some ADA compliance and be good with that. And just, for example, cite that as a reason that says Parks and Rec is up, 6%, 2 of those percentage points are related to ADA compliance work. I think that's right. But that's my guess is how I.
Because what's interesting when you read this, and I guess we're kind of segueing into this unless other people have specific things for Jen on the budget, and of course we'll be spending a lot of time on that next month, is that, the part about how programs are defined, and that, the program, I mean, the program isn't the building, the program is the participants being able to do something. So they talked about a program is being able to come to a selectmen's meeting and make public comment. A program is being able to picnic, a program, so things that I think, it's kind of a different way, because I think so often the lens on ADA is physical stuff. And that helps you deliver the program, but it was so much more than that when you read this. It's just, it's so much more in terms of, what we need to be thinking about in terms of, accessibility to program.
That's right.
In the ADA, are we gonna go into the report?
Sure, unless anybody had anything else they wanted to remind you about getting into the budget? Okay.
They do address parking stalls. Do they mean, like, we would have to reline the entire lot, or just the handicap spots?
They were just referring to the handicap spot.
Okay.
That's all they looked at. They didn't have anything to do with the rest of them.
Sure. because that's a big job if we had to reline everything again.
Right, and I do think too, some of it is, it's not just about relining, a lot of them, most of them were about the pitch. The side-to-side pitch is greater than what it can be. So I think in a lot of those cases, some of it may be, well, that's gonna wait until the parking lot is redone, right? So we can make the stalls the appropriate size, but that part, because you're not gonna, are we gonna dig up and, you know, so that's the types of things that we're gonna have to
So
be.
this is a really good example. Let's say that they come in and say that handicap access parking at the nature center is the top priority because it's bad. Okay, that parking lot needs to be repaved and fixed. So one of the things that you'd want to do is, if the expenditure recommendation for ADA compliance has that at the top of the list, then you guys should reasonably add as a capital item the redo of that entire parking lot, because we're not gonna we're not gonna fix the ADA accessibility in that parking lot and not do the parking lot. So this is why having a seat at the table like you have, to say, all right, what are the priorities? In fact, you kind of want to hear that, to then reverse engineer, okay, what capital projects should we do so that this is done as efficiently as possible?
Right.
That's a potential example.
Right.
So this working group will be coming back to the different departments or commissions that are impacted to report back out to us to say, okay, this is what we feel needs to be prioritized.
Well, it's mostly going to be
Parks.
Public Works and Parks and Rec, because you guys
Right.
have the biggest capital expenditures.
Mhm.
There's going to be a lot of things such as meeting accessibility that might require fairly small expenditures, or really nothing, just changing the format of our presentations, so say a low vision person could read it, stuff like that, which, right, it's minimal cost to do, that's just a change in practice that's required. But most of the big dollar capital things will be affected by this, are going to be Parks and Rec and Public Works. And then you guys are heads off the table for that.
Right, but that'll be more staff-led and then them reporting to us in terms of what they're prioritizing?
Well, that's why you'll want to listen to that and then report back to the commission. This is what I'm hearing that they need to
Right.
do first. And these 4 things in that grouping that they've come up with are on Parks property. So let's go back and think about, say, a capital expenditure that we could do now and fix all of this at once, because that's going to be the most efficient way to do that. And that's why oddly, there could be a ramp up in capital expenditures, because we got to fix an ADA problem, and if we're going to do that, we might as well fix the rest of this, because it's the most efficient way to do it. So let's see.
Right, okay. And that's all gonna happen within the time frame of now to December, when we
We'll
usually
have
do
the
the
top
budget?
priorities pulled out of phase 1 that we want to concentrate on for this budget cycle
Mhm.
in the next 60 days,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, so it will,
So Jen's gonna have a perspective on that,
okay,
and she'll be able to say, all right, here are the capital projects affected by that, let's get this on the list for this cycle,
all right, so that will play into the fiscal
27.
2027 planning. Other sort of questions, thoughts people had in reading this report, there really, it's a lot of information, I know. I wanted to make sure you all had a chance to, I know we've been talking that it would be coming out for quite a few months, and I thought it was really helpful and
Yeah, nice job.
well written, they did a nice job. Any other, questions you have on it for Jen, for me, for John, who I know is very involved in the process? But, I mean, Jen's right, and clearly that, a lot of it does impact the parks, of course. Did they look at Great Island at all, or no, because it's not really open yet?
No, they didn't, but, I mean, the buildings are gonna remain closed for the foreseeable future, so that's not an issue. What we do need to do is make sure that the park itself is fully accessible, and a big part of that solution is gonna be to put in that parking, which we are going to do.
Yeah. And certainly during the master planning process, we talked a lot about accessible features. I mean, that was woven through, I think, many of our conversations, but.
We'll start with parking.
Well, let's start with parking.
Any other questions or specific questions on the report, or more information you feel you all need, or? You're good? Okay, well, there'll be a lot more. I think it's gonna be woven into our conversations pretty much on an ongoing basis. But, we will be interested to hear back on certainly charity and, how we're gonna proceed with that. We do have some money for charity too, don't we have some of the fundraiser money
Well, for the playground,
for the playground?
that's it.
Okay, but
So, but hopefully, we won't be spending any of that, and we'll be having the contractor make the repairs.
Happy to join a phone call about that
Right,
with the
right.
contractor.
But understood, but separately in capital planning, we do still have some amount of money, I believe, that was set aside from the brick sales.
But that's strictly for the playground, like it can't be used.
Right, but I'm just saying, at what point do we think about how we might want to
Oh, want to utilize that. I got it.
utilize that money? You know, is it another
I'm
piece
stuck
of,
on the ADA.
sorry, is it another piece, well, it could be
It
another
could be.
piece of equipment, but
Right.
could it be another, just in general, piece of equipment? Is it more picnic, is it more better just, I don't wanna let the money, people
Just sit
gave
there.
their money, they
Right.
bought their bricks for the playground,
Right.
and I don't think we should have that money sitting there indefinitely.
Wouldn't shade be one of the ones that, didn't like adding more shade was one of the things we were looking into right there?
I don't know, because that one was the one place that actually has some shade.
I thought we got some feedback about it. I thought that was the,
We did.
yeah, for Cherry Lawn, right? That was
Yep.
the one,
Did we?
I thought so.
I'd have to go back and,
So I just-
We had that big tree, and we moved, there are tables over there. The tables used to be underneath the tree, we moved them outside, put
Yeah.
new tables in. I think maybe the shade on the actual playground itself was a question, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see how we would be able to accommodate that.
A 6-story umbrella.
Yeah, that's what you'd have to do, is put a whole umbrella around it.
We're good.
I don't know, I'm just thinking that the playground's been done, it was, what, the middle of the year. We have some amount of money, I don't remember the amount off the top of my head. If I had to guess, I would say it's $20,000 or $30,000
somewhere in there.
in a special account that we have to use specifically for that playground. I just don't want us to forget that the money is there and not let it sit, because I mean, to be fair to the donors, they don't want sitting in a town bank account, they want something nicer for the kids, so I just think
And
this
it has
was
to
a
go to Cherry Lawn's
playground
Correct.
specifically.
Can't put it at Wheat Beach.
Nope.
Is it, now, what I don't understand is, I was just up there this weekend, and the small playground seems to meet everything. We addressed everything in the small playground. It has the paths, right?
The younger children's
The
program?
younger children's one, it has the paths that allows for a wheelchair, or it's ADA accessible to all of the, not rides, but, pictures that we have there or whatever. And the large one, I thought, had a path that goes from the brick
Yes.
walk to the playground itself. No?
It
For the,
does.
for the poured surface? Are you talking about the poured surface or?
Poured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both of them have poured in place surface as well as
Right.
engineered wood fiber. And I will
Right.
be clear, engineered wood fiber is also considered ADA
Right.
accessible.
And they say in the report that it's okay as long as you replace it on a.
For that,
Water
yes,
it.
correct.
Right.
What they had pointed out, I believe, was that the pitch of the poured in place was more than 2.08%, or whatever the amount that it can be pitched. So that pitch is not completely
pitch.
accurate,
Okay.
it's a pitch issue.
It's not that it's not there,
Right.
although I thought they wanted, recommended a surface at the bottom of the slide as well, the poured in place.
Yeah, again, I'd have to go back and look specifically, and they have provided us with reports of specific details and each playground and note each thing, so I have to go back and take a look at it. But that seemed to be, especially in that report, the more general terms was all about the pitch and the slope of that poured in place surface. So, I mean, it could be, instead of, I believe it's supposed to be nothing more than 2.08% or something like that. So if it's 3,
Mhm.
they're gonna cite it, so to the naked eye, you might not be able to tell, but what they do is they come out with levels and they're, placing it on everything
Yeah.
and checking everything. So just the slightest amount that it's off.
Yeah, just seems like it'd be a simple fix, that's all. I mean, not like we're building something at the porcelain.
Well, not really, because you
Not-
can't, you're not gonna be able to adhere, just add another layer to even it. I don't know, but I don't think it would bond well. So most likely, you'd have to rip it up and re-pour it. So,
We'll have a good conversation.
we're gonna,
with-
yeah, exactly, it's gonna be a
Okay.
big conversation to have.
But if on some of the areas where there are wood chips, for instance, we said, well, let's add some of the mats like we used at Baker.
And make
You
it
could do that,
accessible.
you could do that if
Theory
you have
that we've
to.
got-
I mean, that just makes it a little bit easier. Again, it is considered accessible
Right.
with the engineered wood, because it's not regular mulch, it's engineered wood fiber that's made for that, but yes, and it just requires more maintenance and upkeep and things like that.
But in theory, that's where we have this little bit of money left. We could say,
If we wanted to add some mats,
If
or
we
we
wanted to add
want
some
to
more
extend
mats.
an area, we
right,
could maybe do that, yes.
I just don't wanna forget that that money's there and available to us.
No, it's a good reminder, because I forgot. I don't even think I knew that it was $30,000. And $30,000 is a lot of money.
That might not be the exact number, but that's what I've got like tucked back in my head. It was enough money
You can
that
do stuff
you
with
could do
that.
stuff with. It was definitely enough money to do some stuff with, but I hope I didn't get everybody excited and it's not that much. But I recall it was a decent amount of money, and it is definitely a separate account.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in there. Any other more questions or comments on this report? No? Okay. Okay, there'll be a lot more discussion coming out. Okay, so we kind of knocked those two off together, but they very much seem to go hand in hand. Want to spend a few minutes reviewing the upcoming Pear Tree Beach Park Improvement Project. You know, we haven't done a major capital improvement project since, I think, before every one of us has been on this commission. So I just want to make sure that people are kind of familiar. The money was approved by the RTM. We got through the 10-day waiting period. We're good to go. So I just want to make sure everybody understands kind of what happens now in terms of executing the projects, getting us from here to ribbon cutting, because as a group we had not done this before. So money was approved for the project and to retain Weston and Sampson as the construction manager. Is that contract oversight in process?
Weston and Sampson's has been signed and given to them, and I have one from Yield Industries is the contractor that will be ready for your signature. I'll be bringing that up. So working on that, making sure we have all their insurance, their bonds, all that kind of work. So that's what's happening right now. We are having a pre-construction meeting tomorrow with them because of the time. The Board of Selectmen is in the process of putting together the building committee. But because we're on a time constraint, we need to get this all settled. So we're moving forward with that meeting. We are anticipating, and I'll know more after tomorrow's meeting, we've got like a 2-page agenda. It's gonna be it's just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. We all know how we're handling things, process. We'll know more then about staging, you know, what might be open or not open if the whole lot access needs to be closed. The idea is that they would be starting on November 3rd.
Which is right around the corner.
With completion on May 1st. So those are the dates that were in the contract, so we'll know more about that if we can, hopefully we're sticking to that. We are in a tight time frame because there are certain times within the that construction period that we can't be in the water, and different things that we're restricted from because of the DEP permits and possibly also Army Corps permits. So we need to get in and hit the ground running. So I believe they've already been starting to work on the stuff behind the scenes on what they need to do to get Weston and Sampson some information having to do with sort of the disposal sites. Weston and Sampson would have to sign off on that, and the town would have to sign off on that. But so we're going to be laying out a lot of those processes. So that's kind of where we're at.
So the selectmen approved the formation of a building committee anything in the
Yeah,
town?
so I would-
you can
so-
do that?
We're working on forming that, since you and I had our exchange about that earlier. My view is that we ought to have a voting member from the Parks and Rec Commission on there. So somebody needs to decide if they want to sign up for that. It's a real work job, so anytime you're a part of a building committee, just to give you a flavor of what happens is, it's less about, and not at all about, kind of deciding anything about the project. It's much more project execution. So for example, on our school building committees, they've entailed things such as applying for and qualifying for any state grants, coordinating with any state officials to the extent that comes up, reviewing and approving change orders that are part of any construction project, interfacing with neighbors. So for example, with the Henley Palms Royal project, neighbors who live by those schools have had questions or concerns where they'll reach out to the building committee, and somebody on the building committee will sit with them, make sure they understand all that, and that we try to make accommodations to help them. So it's a real job. If you join one of those committees, it's rewarding, and you'll learn a lot about construction, but it would be real work. Similarly, others for the RTM have said they'd like to have a member on there, so Del, you ought to think about somebody from Parks and Rec, particularly if they've got some relevant experience or maybe prior building committee experience to think about that, but we could use somebody from RTM. So the membership will include a Board of Selectmen member. Right now, that's Marcy Minnick. We need somebody from Board of Finance to be determined, Parks and Rec to be determined, RTM Parks and Rec to be determined. It's kind of, that's 4 people. I'd say we get 5 civilians to join, make it up a committee of 9, much like the Great Island Committee. I think we could go larger if the need arises, but you start to get beyond 9 members, and that's a more difficult committee to manage. Anybody can chair it. We've had co-chairs in the past, but having somebody with some expertise and has got the time to work on it. Most of the biggest qualification we need for a building committee is someone who will show up and do work. Building experience committees, that's helpful, but a lot of times with these committees, you're wondering, am I going to have a quorum? Is somebody really going to do the work for all this? So the best thing you can do, anybody who wants to commit to this, is say, I've got the time and bandwidth, I'll be at the meeting and I'll be helpful. That's what we really need. So it doesn't have to be done right now, but maybe it doesn't need to be done right now just because you guys don't meet for another month. I'd love to have reps from both groups sign up to get on the committee right away. We are going to meet, Board of Selectmen meets Tuesday morning, and we've got some folks who've applied from the outside that have an interest, and we're going to go through that and try to start to populate the committee. But we'd love to have somebody from this group and from RTM to join as soon as possible.
Per the charge, as chair, I have an ex officio member, and I would be very happy to keep it that way. So would really like it to be one of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ex officio as well. I'll show up to listen and provide input, kind of like I'm doing right now. But the work is going to be done by the voting members.
And, I mean, we can't really say how often it would meet. I think HHR, the cadence is about once a month.
It's once a
And
month.
that's a big
If
project.
something gets intense, then they can schedule more
Right.
frequent meetings. But the good news about this project is it's done May 1st.
Yep.
Right, whereas HHR, this is a 2.5, 3-year program. Now, that's a much bigger deal than this. There's only 3 discrete projects, and one of them is dredging, and there's not a lot to oversee with all that. So it's a great way to get involved. It'd be very helpful to have somebody join the committee from this group. And I promise it'll be okay. Sort of.
How many people from outside the commission apply?
So I had included it in my first selectman newsletter last week, and we've got 5 inquiries from that. There's one more. I've sent you a list. I can send around to this group if you guys know any of these people. One of them is an area resident, lives on Pear Tree Point Road, so that's good. And I kind of want neighbor representation, just to have somebody there to say, hey, I live here and this is of interest to me.
So they just reach out to you and send
Yeah,
you?
but we've also got the bios, and when they do reach out, we ask them to fill out an application. We kind of want to know what their background is, do they have the time to commit to this, what's their party affiliations, we have to meet minority representation rules, all that stuff.
But their initial point of contact is to you?
Well, to me, just because I
Right.
said yeah, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone, any of you are interested now, certainly speak up, otherwise I'll certainly be making phone calls. We really should have a seat, we really should have a seat.
I need to think about it, but
Okay.
I'm presumably interested.
Okay, great.
And I'll confess I have zero, like, nobody should look at the bathroom remodels in my house as my qualifications as being educated in construction, but, yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
also think in this circumstance, what's really most important is having a representation of the commission and the commission's
Totally.
thinking. Like how we think about projects, what's important to us in terms of what we're delivering to our public that's in keeping with our survey results, that's in keeping with our standards of care, that's in keeping with what our residents have told us through the master plan and other things are important to us. Now, a lot of that is already baked into the project itself. You know, I mean, the bid packet goes down to like how many of a specific kind of seagrass there is. So a lot of that work's been done, but to the extent that there are overages or change orders and decisions have to be made, kind of keeping that lens of servicing, you know, the community for the long term, it's that somebody who's really thinking about how and representing how the commission thinks, and then able to come back with Jen and report on a monthly basis, here's where we are.
It sounds like there's two big buckets, it's oversight and it's stuff happens along the way. It's
Yeah,
one of the
but
two.
that's
Yeah.
anyway, so, the other thing is that, look, if nobody on the commission has time to commit to this, I can appreciate that. Having some kind of ex officio person, and maybe you just appoint a second ex officio to the extent you're not available, that someone can just come in, listen to the meeting, represent the commission's point of view or ask commission questions, but not get tied down with a lot of extra work. That'd be okay too, but let me know what you guys
But
decide.
my only, I just want to do a little thinking and ask some questions that I don't need just about the time involved.
Okay.
But presumably,
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks,
call me
Terry.
tomorrow or this weekend, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
that'd be great.
Yeah, my personal, I would like to have the commission have a voting seat at the table. I think it's a park project,
Well, it's a big project.
and it's a
Point,
big
been a long
project.
time,
It's a
so.
big project, and to not have voting representation,
Yeah.
I-
And we don't get to do these very often.
Think
So let's
about
do it.
this and just let
Sure,
me know
I
what you think.
had sent an email out to the group and said that you were interviewing.
I'm
So,
interviewing,
I will talk
but I'd like specifically to appoint somebody that, run your traps and figure out who you'd like to recommend, and if that person's ready to go, just give me a call, I'll put them on the list.
Sense of the time, how much time this is gonna take.
Well, again, I mean, the project starts November 1st, it's supposed to be done May
So
1st,
These meetings
so.
will be hour and a half, depending on kind of what's covered in the agenda, and then each committee member is gonna have some responsibilities, and it's kind of like Terry says, it's pop-up stuff, right?
Right.
There's a major change order, or there's some significant resident concerns, or, who knows? Kind of like my day, I know about 25% of what's gonna happen in the day, and the rest of it, I don't know what's gonna happen in the day. So
Putting out
there's a
fires.
lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so are the meetings once a week, are they every?
They'll be monthly to start unless for some reason that a more intense schedule makes sense.
Okay.
But I was on 2 committees before and they were always monthly.
Monthly, yeah. And as I said, HHR is monthly, and that's a very significant project. And, you know, I do watch some of those meetings as I'm a neighbor, so you kind of wonder, how's this going? You know, how many mornings I woke up at 6:30. And I don't think their meetings generally go much past an hour, honestly, for
Yeah.
a project that big. Because you've got the construction managers, and they're doing a lot of that, so.
Yeah, a big part of the agenda in the building committee is listening to the construction manager provide an update, which will be around scheduling, budget, change orders, any changes in sequencing, problems with subcontractors. And these are all things that have come up since I've done that. And most of the time, they not only present that, but they also present a solution. So there could be periods of time where individual committee members don't have a ton of work to do. For example, if neighbors are not concerned or the project's on time, I mean, if that's all happening, then you're good. So let's see.
But you remember that Dan Biggs suggested an 8% contingency on this one as opposed to 5% that he recommended on weed, just because there's, the kind of under the surface engineering and stuff. So he just wanted to leave wiggle room, so that would imply that, hopefully we won't need it, but that stuff could come up.
A lot of the stuff that we're doing on that project is buried and not visible. So anytime you dig up anything, there could be stuff down there we just don't know about, either in the water or under the parking lot. We don't think so, but that's why he put that contingency there, so.
Right, all right, but I wanted to run through that because, some people, well, it's part project, I just the commission running it, so I just wanted to make sure everybody was very clear what's, what the process is, but, assuming we get going. I mean, the good news is it's like, the money got approved and, we should be off and running in a couple, breaking ground in a couple of weeks, which is exciting. And it's, we should be open for next summer, knock on wood, so that's great. That's really great, and now probably people saw pictures were posted of, the parking lot all being, overwashed during the storm. I didn't bother to go overlook because I knew it was gonna be overwashed.
Lovely pictures on Facebook.
Yeah, but I'm like, no, knew that was gonna happen. Nothing there.
Kudos that the guard check was already moved.
Yes, we had already taken it out.
Yeah.
We thought ahead about, I should say, Sandy thought ahead about that, and she was like, oh, it's a good thing we took that out, because I was there Tuesday morning. I was like, yeah, it looks like it, because you could see where the tide kind of went, and they moved lots of sand back onto the beach from the parking lot. So
Hopefully that'll be better. Okay, just last couple things. Tamara asked that we approve next year's schedule a little earlier than we've done it in the past, because then she can go ahead and get rooms reserved for us, which sometimes can get tricky. So they didn't get added to the packet till this morning.
This morning I do have copies.
Jen's got
if people
copies
need
if
them.
you need it. But it stays with the
Is the
third Wednesday,
Scheduled for next year. Okay.
the third Wednesday of the month cadence that we've been on.
Okay.
And the only two switches based on next year would be moving the February and the April meetings 1 week later, because the third Wednesday of the month coincides with the school vacation week, and historically we've tried to not meet that week since, we have members who's, are tied to the school schedule, whether it's because of their children or their employment at this point. Right, Jim? He's not even paying attention to me.
This is great, I appreciate getting this early too.
Well, I was reading this one.
No, I said we move it because we have people who either their children in employment means they may not be here on school vacation week.
Right, well,
Well,
we need it.
So,
This is nice to have this early.
okay,
This
yeah.
is helpful.
Okay, so just suggested we push those two meetings out rather than early. Other the February one, moving it a week early made it seem like it was really close to the January
Yeah.
meeting.
Makes sense.
And some of the, I think sometimes the first Wednesday of the month is the first, so it kind of flipped around. But other than that, the November and December were fine. Some years it ends up being like Thanksgiving week or something that we move it. That's not the case for 2026. So, okay, so motion to approve. Terry, Jim second, all in favor? Okay, good. Okay, so we give that to Tamara and she can go ahead, and I guess we'll stay with we meet here during paddle season, and other than that, go down to the paddle hut. I was teasing Jen the other day, they had their off-site, do the budget planning, staff off-site. I was like, oh, where'd you get to go? She said, the paddle hut.
These are not private sector offsites. Oh, geez, an offsite, London, Paris?
I was thinking Norwalk, I mean, yeah, something, but no, these are the paddle hut.
No, that's funny.
So anyway, okay, Jen, any highlights you'd like to speak about? I'm sure you've all read the report.
Since I'm gonna assume you read, just a couple, just top key things was, as I mentioned, the new position for, that's being added to our department is titled Senior Manager of Recreation Programs and Events. It's currently posted on the website. It's up until October 24th. I know as of last week, we had some applicants. I don't know who they are, I haven't seen them. So hopefully we're getting some good applicants. I did put it out not only on the town website, I put it out through Connecticut Recreation and Park Association via email as well as posting it. I also put it out to Westchester Recreation and Park Society via email and posting it, as well as New York State Society is posted. So figured we can try to get whoever we can. Hopefully we'll get somebody. Obviously, one of the key things is we want someone with good camp experience, since that's going to be one of the major functions of that position. Another thing that you'll be seeing probably at the November meeting, staff, we've been working very diligently going through all the rules and regulations, doing a lot of draft revisions that we will then be bringing to the commission, proposing to the commission. So just trying to update it and clean some things up, and some things don't actually match what we actually do, so trying to do those things. So we'll be bringing those forward. Again, the paddle tennis courts, they opened on Monday, so that's now open, and we have all of our block times, and we'll see how busy that gets. Our fall program registration was down a bit. Again, there's a whole table in there with some different numbers for you. Not sure, we noticed that there's a few less participants, 15 or so, 15 to 20 in like our adult paddle tennis lessons, tiny tots, soccer, lacrosse, and mad science. I'm not sure exactly at this point, but so that's down a little bit. And our winter registration program is slightly up, so it's pretty comparable as of where we are now. We are adding some additional programs that were not in the brochure. So that information has gone out, and we're starting to get more people. Although I think we sent out a yoga email blast yesterday, and we got 4 more people just in the one day. So
And I saw fencing.
yeah.
Or
So-
not fencing. I saw archery. Yeah.
I didn't see anybody go, but yeah, it was like skeletons and it was yeah, it was an interesting little thing from the instructor. But and then we're also so we're adding some tennis at Kings Highway, some seasonal cooking,
I saw
cupcake
that,
decorating. And then some other things that are coming out is again trying to do some stuff that's more than sports. So some different programs: theater biz, sports management, and aspiring fashionistas. So for kids 9 to 14. So we'll see where if those take off or not. But that information on those will be going out shortly. And then we just had a movie on the 3rd, How to Train Your Dragon. We had about 200 people that showed up for that. So that was nice. We had a good night for it. And then one of our bigger things is this Sunday, we have our first ever, oh boy, I screwed up every time, Halloween pup parade and costume contest. So there will be prizes given to bring your canines all dressed up in Halloween costumes. One of them is going to be best matching owner and dog costumes. I think most fashionable, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of them, funniest. Actually, it's right in here. Funniest, most glamorous, scariest, spookiest, best owner dog matching costume, best homemade costume. So in addition, we're also having canine demonstrations by the police department. Town clerk's office is going to be there regarding dog licensing and to give information or help or renew people's licenses. We're going to have a pumpkin carver there doing live pumpkin carving, as well as a giant pumpkin that will be arriving, and we'll have a guess the weight, so I can't tell you what it is. So that'll be interesting, and then we've got different sponsors and vendors that'll be there that are dog related. So that's this Sunday.
Does Cassie have the volunteers she needs?
Well, that was one of the things that I was supposed to throw out there, is if anybody is interested in volunteering, be happy to have your help. The event is going to run, we're having early registration. People can just come and show up, but to participate in the dog parade, you're going to have to register, so you can do it ahead of time online. You can do it on a fillable thing and bring it with you, or fill it out right there. So we're having some early registration around 11:30, and then we'll kick things off around noonish, 12 12:15, something like that, we'll start the parade and have everything go. And it should be done by 2 o'clock. So if you're interested, maybe 11-ish.
Okay, so I told her I could come on the early side, but I didn't hear anything back in terms of,
Yeah.
like, yes, we need you for this time or that time.
Yeah, so I would just say if any of you are interested in helping out, I know our first selectman is gonna be one of the
It's to be a puppy
judges.
judge, so.
I think I've been roped in as well, so I'll be judging with you.
There's a very, very short list of things I could be bribed for, but maybe this one might be on.
So it should be,
This is a dog crazy town,
Yes,
so
so
no.
it should be
Well, I'm
fun.
worried we're gonna have like 5,000 dogs.
Yeah.
against the judge.
Yeah.
We don't know, like, we don't know if, is it gonna be a small number of dogs, or, we only have, I think, about 5 pre-registered, so some people might be waiting for the day of, so.
So the only thing I'm worried about is that with all those dogs, I'll show back up at my house with my dogs smelling all these other dogs, and I don't know what's gonna happen, it's gonna be utter chaos.
You should just bring your dog.
Oh, I'm not sure we wanna do that either.
Aside from that, again, our parks guys, they've been busy. We did extend our beach cleanups, that we had such nice weather in September, usually we end around Labor Day.
I just have a quick question about that Halloween. Did you reach out to the local vets to participate in this? or
She was some different vendors, I know there's, I don't know if it's an animal hospital, there's somebody that's gonna be there. Oh, we're also gonna have the, animal control officer will be there as well.
Perfect.
So I know she reached out to a bunch of different places, so it's a variety of people that.
And it's all off leash, right?
They must be leashed. So yeah, so we did extend kind of some additional weekends for beach cleanups and things like that. We did replace, if you haven't been over to Baker, after our walkthrough, the fence between the parking lot and the baseball field has been replaced. It looked great. So staff did that. And we took care of also those plantings by the playground that we talked about. So those have been put in. Everybody's happy.
Neighbors are happy?
Yep. We are preparing for the leaf season, getting ready for all that, which will then take up a bunch of time. And we're starting to winterize our different seasonal facilities, the irrigation, the restrooms, things like that. And then lastly, the pickle roll court was removed at the end of September. Came up, we did test a different adhesive on a piece of it, which seemed to work better. So we're gonna go with that when we reinstall it, and I think we'll have much better, it'll work much better, so.
Did all the adhesive come up like without issue?
Yeah, they power washed it, but it seemed to come up okay, so
Great.
hopefully the heavier duty stuff won't be an issue, but it is what they use at Arden Innes too, so they seem to think it worked okay and just came off with the power washer, so you should be okay.
And this year, this coming season, we'll get it down much early when the weather's much cooler, which,
Right,
again,
right,
we'll put it down right in the smack up towards heat wave of summer.
So I noticed you removed 14 beech trees at Cherry Lawn.
Yes.
So can you elaborate on that?
So those were the
Are they along the
trees-
parking
The
lot?
ones along the parking lot. You didn't even notice them, did you?
No, I haven't been
it-
over there
It
in
looks so
the
much,
past
it looks,
2
it
weeks.
actually looks so much better, but they were hazardous, they were dead. We actually had one.
They were dead?
They were, yeah, a branch had hit a car, fell off and hit a car. So they were definitely hazardous, so those were removed and, but yeah, we'll now look to see where else do we want to replant. I wouldn't plant them right there, cause it's too crowded, but it was all that, those
Yeah,
that
it's
were in
like
the
a hedge.
line.
Yeah, it's
Sort
like
of,
a
yeah, but they were,
beech tree hedge.
yeah, so the ones that were healthy, we kept, so there's still a few there, but the ones that were in poor condition, were taken out.
Yeah, well, there's a beech tree blight.
Yeah. That's all I got. Unless people have specific questions.
Any other questions for Jen? You have doodles on your plate, but dredging?
I was actually on the phone again today. We're working now on determining the best method, what we're gonna use for our permitting and the bidding process. So hopefully that should be coming together shortly, so that we can get it done over the winter.
Okay, I don't have too much actually. The last coastal commission met the night after we last met. They are planning a coastal cleanup on Saturday, November 9th. Usually they start at Pear Tree Point Beach and then work their way up the river and generally get hundreds of pounds of stuff. Anybody from this group who would like to participate is welcome to do so. The only question we have right now is normally they park at Pear Tree, and I couldn't confirm to them that the parking lot will be available and accessible. So Jen will know more about that after tomorrow, and they might have to adjust those plans because of the project. But other than that, they've done this each year for us, which is nice. And there was a comment made, and Jen, I think we made about on the weekends garbage at Pear Tree Point Beach, and that the cans on the weekend were really overflowing, and could we get more garbage cans? I mean, maybe that kind of comes after, obviously, the construction project or whatever, and I saw one picture, and or maybe you sent it too. We heard it there,
Yeah.
you saw it. It's just,
I don't know if
fortunately, what's happening is the cans on the weekends are overflowing, and people, instead of perhaps just taking the stuff home and disposing of it, or just letting it, they're just like dropping it on the ground.
Forget about anybody taking them home. People just are going to throw garbage in their car and take it home. So I think what we need to do though is, it's a pile up of pizza boxes is really what it is. They clog the cans.
Right.
And so they just leave the pizza boxes on the sand next to the can. If we had a trash can that could accommodate pizza boxes, instead of that opening,
Yeah, I mean,
that might help.
I shared it with staff, and we'll talk about it more as we do the budget to see if there's something, but part of that issue too was because we didn't have staff down, it was after the season, and I think that weekend, we didn't have people on to come and rate, because otherwise they would normally have picked it up first
Yeah.
thing, so.
Yeah, I just think
But
people
yes,
are lazy though.
we'll be looking at that when we
Yeah.
look at budget, if there's some different type of can or something bigger, or, but, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think people are gonna crush their pizza box, shove it in even, they just leave it there. So again, if it's something where we can put, you put it in, or something where they just throw
Or what happens is they put it in and then it shoves, it clogs up the whole can, so
Yeah.
you can't put anything else in, so it seems like, but it's really empty,
Right.
yeah.
I'd still ask the public to please take your pizza boxes home if you can't dispose of them properly. I don't think that's too big an ask personally, but we will see what we can do. So that was pretty much it there. Really, there was just lots and lots of preparatory meetings, getting ready for the Board of Finance and the 2 RTM meetings, and then the RTM committee meetings, then the main RTM meeting, just time to shot the video, just a ton of preparatory work getting ready to get those 2 capital projects approved, so that was a pretty heavy lift for a few weeks there, and I just really want to make sure, I thank, Jen in particular, and Dan Biggs, although he's not here, share with it, certainly the weekend before the Board of Finance meeting, they sent us a very long list of questions, and then Jen and I and Dan Biggs were working over the weekend to really get all of their questions answered, and honestly, we were able to answer every one of their questions, I thought, satisfactorily. So thank you in particular, because for Jen and Dan Biggs, again, this is their job, this isn't something they're volunteering to do, and it was a very, very heavy lift going into
I would echo that.
that group of meetings, so that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
That's all I've got. Any new business?
I had my land trust meeting last night. Things that we discussed, there's a lot of discussion about Heights Corner, and that new build going on in Norotan Heights, it's coming along.
Oh, on Edgerton or on Edge
Yeah,
Crossing?
on Edgerton. They're calling Heights Corner, right there.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of it, but Heights and Edgerton.
Because
buildings that
it's
just
the
took-
one
The buildings that just got ripped down.
Yeah, and there's.
It's a shocking view change, by the way, to look over
It
it's
is,
all
yeah, I
up
drove
and
down
it's
there today.
pretty surprising if you haven't seen it.
So I think there was concern over apparently it might go up to another 3rd story, and that's gonna diminish the recreational space there and house that anyway, there's a lot of discussion about that, not a lot of clarity, just to bring that up. And also that there are more people who are coming into town, so of course there's gonna be more usage of the playground. And and the thinking is if we could get in at the P and Z level and make sure that people are, have outdoor access for recreation and so on, that might help to, and nice, you know, environmentally sound plantings there, that will help with the overall environment and extra usage imposed on playgrounds, etc. Anyway, there's lots of discussion about all that. What else was there during the meeting? Lots of discussion about invasives and how we are working on our own properties about invasives. We will be doing our land trust tours over the next couple of weekends, which is why I can't go to this Halloween thing. I have a land trust tour. I suggested that they do it similarly to how we do our tours, and that was embraced, so they're gonna be doing that and discussing maintenance and invasives, et cetera, and how we can help the land trust properties themselves. And what else is there? I guess that's it.
Anything else? All right, motion to adjourn. Chris? Terry, all in favor?
Thank you.